everyone. Welcome. Really glad you're here. I'm Lucy Hitz, Director of Product Marketing at Pantheon. If you're watching this, you've probably heard the pitch for headless architecture approximately 1,000 times, and maybe you've also heard the stories, massive lift, confused content teams, CMS chaos, 6-month timelines. So today we're not here to pitch headless. We're here to talk about how you actually do it and what it looks like when it goes right. I've got two guests here today from AmericanEagle.com, one of the most respected digital agencies working in this space, who have been in the trenches with enterprise clients on making this transition and choosing the best technology for the clients they work with. We have Alex Jones and Daniel Kinney here today. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Hello.
Before we get into the real stuff, can each one of you give a 30-second version of what you do at AmericanEagle.com, what kind of clients you're typically working with?
Yeah, my name's Alex Jones. I am a senior Drupal developer here at AmericanEagle.com, and I focus on building reusable architectures that allow organizations to more easily manage and scale their Drupal platforms. I'm particularly interested in editorial workflows, helping content editors and site owners build workflows that match the way that they work rather than having to fight with the CMS when they're trying to build content. And we're finding with this headless implementation we're building that there are a lot of really interesting editorial opportunities between Next.js and Drupal. So excited to chat about some of those.
Yes, and I'm Daniel Kinney. I'm a Drupal architect at AmericanEagle.com. I have been here now for just over 5 years, have been working with Drupal for almost 2 decades now. So I've been in the space for quite a long time, ever since Drupal 3, in fact. So come through a long, long way. And now working with American Eagle, I work on many clients ranging from, your standard brochure site to your multi-billion-dollar-a-year corporation heavy e-commerce implementation. So very exciting stuff, and very, excited to dig in.
So let's start with this why headless question. And I think we'll start with you, Daniel, because clients don't kind of wake up one day and say, I want a decoupled architecture. What's actually driving these conversations? What's the pain point that gets you in the room? And I know that you work both very closely with clients to figure out what the best solution is. So yeah, what's driving these conversations? What's the pain point that gets you in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a combination of pain point and as well as improving performance by mitigating or removing all of your eggs in one basket effect by serving the front end and the back end all from the same server. Furthermore, it introduces an entire new faction of expertise while introducing React developers and React front enders into the project who may not necessarily know Drupal, in particular Drupal theming. So it kind of separates that and opens the door to a whole new area of expertise, which allows for things to work in parallel. So now we're able to develop the front end and the back end basically in parallel, and then they both kind of meet in the middle. So it introduces an entire new way of developing and a whole kind of different, broadening the horizons of the project, if you will.
Yeah. And, there's a version of going headless that goes really well, like it's done, in what we're going to talk about today, and also in the case study that we partnered on. And there's also a version that becomes a cautionary tale. So what separates them, before anyone writes a line of code?
Well, one thing that Daniel and I are trying to be very diligent about is protecting Drupal's strengths as we're working in this new headless architecture. So I think a lot of times when we hear about headless being a problem in Drupal or being hard to maintain and things like that, it's because maybe the implementation relied on headless to account for areas where that Drupal could have picked up. So when we replace Drupal's strengths and flexibility with a headless implementation that takes away those strengths, it kind of it makes it more difficult to scale the platform. It makes it more difficult to add new features, and those are things that Drupal's really good at. It's really good at scale. It's really good at feature development and flexibility, and it's very easy in a headless implementation to accidentally limit those strengths in Drupal. So we're trying to start not with the technology, not with like, oh, we want to implement a headless architecture, but with the problem, which is how do we build this very large e-commerce site that that has all of these constraints, and where we might want like front end expertise from outside of a Drupal practice. How do we build that in such a way that we protect what Drupal is good at and also extend Drupal in areas that we can?
Exactly. And then that, the success of the project really then dovetails into how well connected those unconnected or headless parts are. So how well they communicate with each other and how fluid that communication pathway is will more or less determine the success of that implementation, right? If there's problems with gathering data from the API endpoints, for example, then you're looking at a troublesome implementation. So it really boils down to how well connected the actual disconnected heads are.
Yeah, so I guess great segue into, I think for you, Daniel, walk me through the stack when AmericanEagle.com goes into a Next.js project on Pantheon. What does that architecture actually look like?
Yeah, so we were really lucky enough to be involved in the beta program for this. So we were able to kind of see it at its, early on phase in its inception. So able to take essentially the Git repository that Pantheon provides, clone that or fork it, and then extend that with any additional packaging, UI libraries, et cetera, that we need, and then connect that up. But it becomes relatively trivial with setting that up, especially with the pipelines and the way that you can utilize sandboxes to set all of this up without even starting a build to begin with. So you can like test all of this out, proof of concept it. The workflows and everything related to that are essentially magical. So it's basically, you start with the RFP, you get your statement of work, you whittle that down, and then you start with the foundation and the framework that the public repositories provide, and you're just basically off and running. It becomes like this very amazing situation.
And one thing I forgot to mention a little earlier, if you're watching this live and you have a question, please, add it in the comments, and we'll try to get to it. If you want to dig deeper in any area that Alex and Daniel are talking about. We've tried to keep these live events short because we know people have limited time, but we're happy to answer any questions live. So please add them in the comments if you have them. But Alex, from the agency side, what does Pantheon change about this conversation? What's possible with Pantheon underneath that wasn't before?
Having this this separate environment where we can push up a Next.js front end and connect it with Drupal, all within Pantheon, it makes it so much easier to explore a complex architecture like this, and it drastically reduces like the upfront operational cost of trying to adopt a complex architecture. So whereas before, if you wanted to implement a Drupal site with all of these third-party connectors, or you wanted other servers up in the cloud, you're going to have to figure that out yourself on AWS or GCP or Azure or something like that. And that can be a really painful process when you have an environment provider like Pantheon that can really do almost everything for you, manage uptime, have support, things like that. On the Drupal side, but then suddenly you want to go and spin up another server somewhere else, and you have to manage all those things yourself. And that operational cost is a very hard thing to sell to stakeholders often. So having, as Daniel was talking about, these sandboxes where you can just spin up Next.js and try it with your Drupal site, and you can explore as a developer or as a development team. It means that you can work out a lot of the kinks of a headless project early on at the point where you know the least about the project, but you still have to present something to stakeholders so that they can make an informed decision. So having things in Pantheon right now, like a multi-dev environment that spins up in the front end and then a separate one that spins up in the back end, it means that we can have work streams going in the front end where our front end developers are building out that headless rendering implementation. And we can also work on the Drupal back end, and we can spin up these multi-dev environments instantly and test them together. We don't have to deploy stuff to dev or test or live and wire things up to some server that we have somewhere else that we're also trying to manage. Pantheon's just hosting all of it in the same way that you would just host your traditional Drupal site, and it just lowers the barrier to entry for exploring a really cool architecture like this. And that means that we have a lot more time to explore building out features and other things that are actually going to impact the end users that we're working with.
Yeah, I actually had a follow-up question, I think, for you, Daniel, because this is something we covered when we did the interview for the case study. What are kind of tangible impacts you felt, in addition to really kind of opening the door to more innovation and thus greater impact for your clients? Have you seen any kind of shortened timelines, or you mentioned earlier, basically, being able to open the door to different types of developers working together in a different way than maybe they had previously. But what does the customer impact look like just in these early stages?
Yeah, I would say it covers all of those things. We're saving hours. We're able to move laterally and make decisions very quickly and adjust and do mini proof of concepts, if you will, as we find out more details about, as we build the site out and find more intricate details about the business, we can move quickly and try this out here on a multi-dev. And then furthermore, that all ties into our local DDev pipeline, and then our the GitHub pushes and all of that is all automated. So it takes all of the brain work and that heavy lifting of managing all of those pipelines and everything. So it allows you to really focus in, as Alex said, on solving the problems that are going to improve the customer's lives and the end user's lives. So that in itself just shifts the entire conversation from trying to keep the lights on, which you guys do very well for us, into how do we make this website amazing for you guys instead.
Awesome. And a final question I had in this section is around, and I'm curious if you agree with this statement, if you don't, and just your insight here, whether on this project or on future projects that you're thinking about. But content teams is where a lot of headless projects can historically fall apart. So devs ship a beautiful architecture, marketing says, where's the page builder? How do you land that transition well? Do you agree with that statement, that that's where you've seen headless projects historically fall apart, first of all, I guess? And then I'm curious about your perspective on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the common theme and has been historically in Drupal forever. It's always been, where's my page builder? And there's been various approaches to, attacking that problem with layout builder, paragraph layouts, et cetera, et cetera. There's an innumerable amount of addresses to that. But the most recent one that has been the most impactful and what I see as the future of Drupal, honestly, is Canvas. And then introducing the front end into building and utilizing Canvas components. So you're actually using the front end as the source of truth, and then sending that structure and that kind of style into Canvas, and then supplementing those components with actual data from the CMS itself. So that in itself gives you that page builder that everybody asks for, where you can drag and drop your widgets in there and all of that, and superpowers that essentially by pulling in that structure and that information from the front end automatically, and then setting up routes and endpoints to match those explicitly based on contracts. So we're working on systems now that introduce all of those new technologies and kind of tie that together. And we feel like, we're more or less at the forefront, or at the, the tip of the spear when it comes to these things. Because Canvas is obviously a new initiative, and, it's just extremely exciting to watch that. And to be perfectly honest, I think that is going to be the game changer for Drupal, altogether. because where's my page builder has always been the question since, Drupal 3.
Yeah. So what's the biggest mistake you see teams make when they go headless for the first time, internally or just, externally from what you've observed in the industry? And I'll give you each 30 seconds just to give your take.
Yeah, I would say the single biggest thing I see is that we can easily forget with the headless implementation to keep the client in mind and keep the end user in mind. Obviously, we're constantly thinking about the client when we're building out a website, but as I was talking about earlier about protecting Drupal's strengths, it's easy to lose the experience that a content editor or a site administrator has working with their website, building content on their website when you're using a headless implementation that can replace a lot of the things that are already present and powerful in Drupal. So that's one of the things that we're really trying to avoid here and to solve for with this Canvas implementation is making sure that editors will have just as powerful an experience, arguably a more powerful experience editing content in Drupal with this headless implementation. So yeah, I would say keeping that end user in mind, keeping that content editor in mind and how they're going to interact with your site is probably one of the most important things. And one of the things where we've seen past implementations kind of falter.
Yeah, and for me, I see it falter before it even gets to the start line, right? People see the implementation and kind of look at it as a broad scope and just get overwhelmed and just go, there's no way we could possibly do that. There's just too many moving parts, too many pieces. So they don't even make it to the, the start line. So what I recommend is, take it in bite-sized chunks, like, think about it in these little pieces that are accomplishable, attainable goals, similar to like running an ultra marathon. Like, you're not going to think about running 100 miles all at once because you're going to get completely overwhelmed. You're going to break it up aid station by aid station by aid station. So I think that's the biggest thing that I see happen is they don't even make it to the start line or don't even consider it because they're just overwhelmed by the complexities right out of the gates.
Yeah, and just to dig a little deeper there, how did Pantheon help with that piece?
Yeah, so it gave us the starting platform, right, with the repository and the framework, the foundation, and then as I mentioned, the pipelines and all of that set that up, remove all of that kind of complex networking and connectivity and all of that, and that allows you to actually focus on those digestible pieces of creating the API endpoints, authentication mechanisms, et cetera, et cetera. So it just removes a lot of that kind of overhead about SLAs and this, that, and the other, and all of that. And then furthermore, you get New Relic attached to it. So you're able to like look at deep analytics on processes and stuff. And like, it's just a fantastic platform that helps it pretty much every step of the way through, from even the RFP, like we're able to demonstrate or set up a sandbox and show proof of concept all the way through the development pipeline, all the way to live. So there's the entire process at pretty much every step of the way improves the overall relationship with client.
So this was exactly the conversation I was hoping for. Real patterns, no fluff. Alex and Daniel, genuinely thank you. AmericanEagle.com is one of the best in the biz at this, and I think everyone watching just got a pretty valuable free consultation. And if today resonated, we have a link in the comments to the full Pantheon and AmericanEagle.com case study, real project, real results, and we'll have a part 2 to that coming in the fall as well, worth a read. So please go check it out. We do these LinkedIn Lives regularly. Follow Pantheon so you don't miss the next one. And if you've got questions after today, drop them in the comments. We read every one. Connect with our speakers here today. I'm sure they'd love to answer any questions that you have. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing.